Right. So today we're going to dive deep into the world of Robert Hooke.
Robert Hooke.
Yeah. Now, most people, when they hear Hooke, they think,
Springs.
yeah, Hooke's Law, right?
Exactly.
But we've got some excerpts here from a biography on Hooke, along with some of his actual work on springs.
Yes.
And I got to say, looking over this stuff, he's a lot more than just springs.
He is so much more than just springs. That's what I found so fascinating about him. He really was a polymath. I mean, he was into everything from like the microscopic world to
Yeah.
the vastness of space.
Right.
And he even played a role in rebuilding London after the Great Fire.
Oh,
But for me, it was really his inventive spirit that shines through.
yeah, that inventive spirit, absolutely. But before we even get into the inventions, I got to ask you about this invisible college. Now, that sounds like a secret society.
Oh, right.
What is that all about?
Yeah, it sounds very mysterious, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So the Invisible College, it was actually this informal group of intellectuals back in 1600s England, so way before the Royal Society became a thing.
Okay.
So you can kind of think of it like a science club, you know, where all these really, really bright minds of the day, including Hooke, they would get together and they would just discuss and explore all these ideas that were coming out of this new science of Francis Bacon.
Okay, so it wasn't so much secret handshakes and all that. It was more just like
More of a think tank.
a think tank for the brewing scientific revolution.
Exactly, yeah.
Huh.
It was all about observation and experimentation
Right.
and really collaborating, kind of like laying this foundation for what we understand as modern science today.
Interesting. So did it have any influence on Hooke himself?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, for a young, curious mind, like his,
Yes.
being part of this group, it was like rocket fuel.
Yeah.
You know, it totally shaped his approach to understanding the world, to understanding nature.
Yeah.
I mean, they're even inspired by Bacon's book, New Atlantis,
Oh, yeah.
which envisioned this like utopian society where science was at the core.
Right.
I mean, talk about dreaming big.
God, it makes you wonder what those meetings must have been like.
Right.
You know, just these guys getting together, talking about the nature of reality, pushing the boundaries of knowledge.
Yeah.
Now, here's a funny thing that I found kind of strange.
Okay.
Apparently, there's no confirmed portrait of Robert Hooke.
Isn't that bizarre?
Yeah. It's like history just tried to erase him visually.
Yeah, yeah. The man who revolutionized how we see the world, and
Yeah.
we don't even know what he looked like. It's strange. It adds this layer of mystery, I think. I don't know, it makes me wonder, maybe his lack of a visual record kind of makes his intellectual legacy even more powerful. You know?
Right, right. It's all about the ideas. And speaking of which, he started out as a lab assistant working with some pretty big names.
Yeah.
Robert Boyle, the gas laws guy,
Mm-hmm.
and Christopher Wren,
The architect.
the architect. Yeah, that's quite the crew.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was in the lab where we really see his mechanical genius start to shine through.
Okay.
So Boyle at the time, he was really struggling to create like a functional vacuum pump,
Yeah.
something that other experts at the time couldn't quite figure out, you know?
Right, right.
But Hooke, he was just so good with his hands, you know, he loved tinkering,
Yeah,
and he was a great problem solver.
yeah.
And he built a vacuum pump that actually worked.
I got to admit, vacuum pumps don't usually get me too excited.
Okay.
But knowing that he was a key player in developing one, especially one so crucial to Boyle's work,
Yeah.
that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So beyond just building it, what did he do with this vacuum pump?
He didn't just build it, he USD it.
Right.
So he conducted all these really cool experiments on respiration. He figured out how low air pressure would affect birds, and that actually gave him some really early insights into what we know now about the role of oxygen in combustion.
Wow. So he was already on the trail of oxygen back then.
Yeah, I know. It's amazing how far back some of these ideas go.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
It seems like he was always looking for connections, always trying to understand how things worked
Yeah.
at a deeper level.
Totally. Yeah.
And this brings us to his famous book, Micrographia.
Yes.
I've seen some of the images in this book. They're incredible.
They're stunning.
What was so groundbreaking about it?
Well, Micrographia was more than just a book. I mean, it was really a revolution in scientific communication.
Really?
The Royal Society actually commissioned it
Wow.
as a way to kind of showcase the power of the microscope
Okay.
to King Charles II, no less.
Wow. So it was like the first science coffee table book?
Exactly.
Just beautiful and informative. I mean, showing close-ups of things like a fly's eye.
Yes.
or the edge of a razor.
Exactly. Yeah, and you can imagine for people back then seeing these hidden worlds revealed through Hooke's incredibly detailed drawings.
Yeah.
It must have been absolutely mind-blowing, not just for the scientists,
Right.
but for anyone who was curious about, the world around them.
Yeah, yeah.
Suddenly they could see that even the most mundane things, like a fly,
Right.
were teeming with complexity and beauty.
Yeah, so that visual element must have been key.
That was huge.
It wasn't just about the science. It was about sharing that sense of wonder
Exactly.
with a wider audience.
Mm-hmm.
Did it inspire other scientists to maybe start incorporating visuals in their own work?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, micrographia, it set a new standard for scientific publications.
Yeah.
It showed everyone just how powerful visual communication could be
Right.
in making complex ideas accessible and actually engaging.
Yeah, yeah.
And it all ties back to that, Invisible College and their emphasis on observation and collaboration.
Like they were pioneers
Yeah.
of a new way of seeing and understanding reality.
Yeah, yeah.
Breaking free from the limitations of unaided perception, using tools like the microscope to reveal these hidden workings of the universe.
Right.
And Hooke was at the forefront of that.
He was there.
But before we go too far down the rabbit hole of micrographia,
Okay.
there's one little detail that I just can't get over. You mentioned in your notes that Hooke had this idea about writing within a dot.
Oh, yeah.
Centuries before microdots were a thing.
I know. It's amazing.
It's like he was envisioning the potential for miniaturization.
Yeah.
Concealing information.
Yeah. Hiding in plain sight.
Yeah.
It's incredible. And who knows, maybe some modern inventions were even inspired by some of his early ideas. It wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
But even brilliant minds can have their missteps. The biography talks about his ether theory.
Wait, so the guy who was so meticulous in his observations also believed in this mysterious substance that fills all of space.
I know. It's a bit of a head scratcher.
I'm curious. Tell me more about that.
All right. So the ether was this hypothetical substance that a lot of people at the time, including Hooke, believed was everywhere.
Right.
They thought it was needed for things like light and gravity to travel,
Right.
It was kind of like this cosmic glue holding the universe together.
Interesting. So how did this ether concept fit into Hooke's overall scientific thinking?
Well, I mean, remember, he was always trying to find the underlying mechanisms, the hidden machinery behind the things he observed. And ether was his attempt, albeit a flawed one, to explain these mysterious forces that seem to act at a distance.
So he was trying to find a unifying principle.
Exactly. He wanted to connect the dots to create a coherent picture of how the universe worked.
I can see the appeal of that.
Yeah.
It's a grand ambition, even if the specific idea of ether didn't quite pan out.
Yeah.
But, science is full of these dead ends.
Right.
It's a process of trial and error, of constantly testing and refining our understanding of the world.
Totally.
So in a way, even Hooke's incorrect theories contribute to the overall progress of science.
Yeah.
They show us what doesn't work, which helps us narrow down the possibilities and get closer to the truth.
It's all part of the journey, right? Even the wrong turns can lead to unexpected discoveries.
Absolutely. And speaking of discoveries, we've talked about Hooke the inventor, Hooke the microscopist. But did you know he was also a keen astronomer?
Oh, yeah. This guy never stopped.
Hold on. So he was building telescopes and mapping the stars, too? Seriously, is there anything this guy didn't do?
He was a man of many talents, that's for sure. And he wasn't just stargazing for fun. He was trying to tackle some of the biggest astronomical questions of his time.
Like what? What was he hoping to uncover?
Well, one of his big ambitions was to measure stellar parallax.
Stellar parallax. Now, refresh my memory. What's that again?
Okay, so imagine you're looking at something far away, like a tree. From two different windows in your house, the tree's going to look like it shifts slightly against the background, right?
Yeah, I get that.
Depending on which window you're looking from.
Right.
That's parallax. Now, apply that to stars. If you observe a star from Earth at two different points in its orbit around the sun, the star should appear to shift slightly against the background of more distant stars. That tiny, tiny shift is stellar parallax.
Okay, I get it. So if you can measure that tiny shift, you can calculate the distance to the star.
Exactly.
But wouldn't that be incredibly difficult to do with the technology back then?
It was a monumental challenge, but that didn't stop Hooke. He focused on a star called Gamma Draconis, which conveniently passed directly overhead in London.
Oh,
So it made observations a bit easier. And get this, he even built a special zenith telescope specifically designed to point straight up
wow.
to try and minimize distortions from the Earth's atmosphere.
That's dedication. So did he actually manage to measure the parallax of Gamma Draconis?
Well, his measurements suggested a parallax, but it turned out to be incorrect. But what's amazing is that he might have actually detected something else. Stellar aberration.
Stellar aberration. Okay, now you've got me intrigued. What's that?
Think about running in the rain.
Okay, I'm with you.
Even though the rain is falling straight down, it looks like it's coming at you at an angle.
Yeah.
Because you're moving, right?
Right.
Stellar aberration is a similar effect. Because Earth is zipping through space,
Yeah.
the light from stars appears to come from a slightly different direction than it actually does. It's like the universe is playing tricks on us.
So Hooke might have stumbled upon this phenomenon a century before it was explained?
I know, right? It's incredible. He was constantly pushing the boundaries of observation,
Yeah.
leading to unexpected discoveries.
Speaking of pushing boundaries, the biography mentions a little clash between Hooke and another astronomer, Johannes Hevelius.
Oh, yes.
What was their beef about?
Well, Hevelius was a respected astronomer, known for his amazingly detailed observations of the moon and stars. But get this, he did it all without telescopes.
Wait, he mapped the moon without a telescope.
I know, right? It's mind-boggling. He used these elaborate instruments he built himself, giant quadrants and sextants to measure the positions of celestial objects.
That's incredible. But I can see where Hooke might have had some objections. He was all about using instruments to enhance our senses, right?
Exactly. Hooke saw telescopes as extensions of our perception, capable of revealing details that would otherwise remain hidden.
So it was a debate about the role of technology in science, the balance between human perception and the power of instruments. That's a debate that still resonates today, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. I mean, think about all the sophisticated instruments we use in modern astronomy.
It's fascinating to see how these fundamental questions were playing out centuries ago.
Yeah, it's like a time capsule of scientific thought.
So who ended up winning this debate? Did anyone side with Hooke or Hevelius?
Well, the Royal Society actually sent Edmund Halley, of Halley's Comet fame, to try and settle the dispute.
No way. Halley himself got involved.
Yep. They wanted someone impartial to assess the accuracy of Hevelius's observations.
Wow, talk about a high-stakes scientific showdown. So what was Hawley's verdict? Did he side with Hooke's emphasis on instruments, or did he validate Hevelius's naked eye approach?
Well, even though Halley witnessed Hevelius's skill firsthand, he couldn't quite replicate his measurements with the same precision, and this just added more fuel to the fire of the debate.
It sounds like a classic case of new technology challenging old methods.
Exactly, and it highlights the importance of skepticism and verification in science. Even the most respected experts can be wrong, and sometimes new tools can help us see things in a whole new light.
But Hooke's insistence on the importance of instruments, this idea of a sixth sense through technology, that seems pretty forward-thinking.
Absolutely. He saw instruments not just as tools, but as extensions of our senses, allowing us to perceive the universe in ways we never could before.
Which brings us to what might be the most dramatic chapter in Hooke's life. His rivalry with none other than Isaac Newton.
Oh, yeah. Newton.
Now that's a clash of titans. I'm ready for the drama. Let's dive into that.
Buckle up. It's about to get interesting. It's going to be explosive. So where do we even begin with this rivalry? I mean, their disagreements were legendary.
Well, the biography focuses mainly on light and gravity.
Ah, yes, the classic battlegrounds of scientific thought.
So let's shed some light on their differing views about the nature of light itself, no pun intended.
Oh, right.
So Newton, he was all about this corpuscular theory of light.
Yes, little particles, like bullets flying through space.
Yeah, it makes sense considering his work on motion and forces, right?
Absolutely.
So where did Hooke stand on this?
Well, Hooke, always the contrarian, he favored a wave theory of light.
Oh, interesting. So he thought light was more like ripples on a pond.
Exactly, vibrations traveling through a medium.
Huh. It's funny how their personalities seem to reflect their scientific viewpoints. Newton, the meticulous mathematician, all about those discrete particles.
Right.
And Hooke, the inventive observer, seeing the interconnectedness of waves.
I love that, yeah. It's like their approaches to science were woven into the very fabric of their being. And get this.
What?
Modern physics tells us that light actually behaves as both.
Whoa. Hold on, so they were both right.
Yeah. It's this mind-bending concept called wave-particle duality.
Wave-particle duality.
Yeah.
That just blew my mind.
I know, right?
Makes you wonder what they could have accomplished if they had, put their egos aside
Right.
and actually collaborated.
Oh, imagine that dream team.
The possibilities, man.
Right. But, I mean, their personalities clashed too much.
Yeah.
They just couldn't see eye to eye, especially when it came to gravity. I mean, Hooke really felt that Newton didn't give him enough credit for his own work on the theory of gravity.
So the light debate was heated.
Oh, yeah.
But the gravity debate was even more bitter.
Definitely, there were some hurt feelings there.
Okay, well, let's get down to the nitty-gritty of the gravity debate.
Okay.
What was Hooke's claim exactly?
Well, Hooke had been doing all this work with conical pendulums.
Conical pendulums.
Yeah.
Those are those weights on strings that swing in a circle, right?
Exactly.
I kind of remember those from physics class, fun to watch, but I don't quite see the connection to gravity.
So Hooke's having this aha moment while he's watching these pendulums go back and forth.
Yeah.
And he realizes that their motion is similar to how he pictures planets orbiting the sun,
Interesting.
So he writes to Newton, just kind of throwing this idea out there that there might be an attractive force between objects.
Okay.
And get this, he even suggests that the force might be inversely proportional to the square of the distance between them.
Wait a minute. Isn't that like the core principle of Newton's law of universal gravitation?
You got it. Hooke basically laid the groundwork, but he just didn't have the mathematical chops, to really flesh it out.
So Hooke kind of provided the big picture, the conceptual framework.
Yeah, the vision.
And Newton, with his mathematical genius, was able to turn that vision into a concrete equation.
Exactly. But the problem was, Newton, he wasn't exactly the sharing type.
Oh, no. So when Newton published Principia, the book where he, lays out the law of universal gravitation, he just, brushed over Hooke's contribution?
Pretty much. Hooke was not happy about it.
I bet. I mean, talk about adding insult to injury. First, you have this public disagreement about the nature of light.
Right, right.
And then to have your ideas on gravity seemingly appropriated.
Snubbed.
Yeah. Got sting a little, right?
Oh, absolutely.
But hey, that's science sometimes, right?
Yeah, unfortunately.
Full of drama, egos, ambition.
Yeah, it's not always a pretty picture. It reminds us that behind every scientific breakthrough, there are real people.
Right.
With their own, baggage, motivations, struggles.
Makes you appreciate the human side of these scientific giants.
Cool.
But hey, speaking of giants, we haven't even touched on Hooke's architectural work.
Oh, right.
Didn't he help rebuild London after that Great Fire?
Oh, yeah, the Great Fire of 1666. I mean, what a devastating event. The city was in ruins.
Yeah, just imagine London, just, buildings reduced to ash.
Yeah.
Thousands homeless.
It was a turning point for the city.
Yeah, that's a powerful image.
It is.
So where does Hooke fit into all of this?
Well, in the midst of all this chaos, Hooke saw an opportunity to kind of reshape London.
Interesting.
He teamed up with Christopher Wren, the architect behind St. Paul's Cathedral.
Oh, wow. So Hooke was working with Wren. That's a pretty impressive duo.
I know, right? Wren was basically put in charge of the whole rebuilding effort, Surveyor of the King's Works. Pretty important title.
Yeah, so what did they come up with? Did they have a plan for rebuilding London?
Oh, they had big plans. Wider streets, open spaces, fire-resistant buildings. But get this. Hooke's detailed architectural plan, the one he poured his heart and soul into, it's gone, vanished, lost to history.
A lost plan. Man, that's a mystery for the ages. What kind of city did he envision? I mean, how did his scientific mind influence his architectural vision,
It's a question that keeps historians and architects up at night, what could have been?
Yeah.
But even though that grand plan is gone, we can still see hints of his scientific thinking in his architectural work. For example, he was really into the catenary curve.
The shape a hanging chain makes. What does that have to do with buildings?
Well, it turns out a catenary arch is incredibly strong and stable, perfect for supporting weight.
Oh.
So Hooke, being the clever guy he was, he incorporated those into his designs.
So he was applying his knowledge of physics,
Yeah.
his understanding of forces and shapes to create buildings that weren't just, beautiful, but also strong and functional.
Exactly. He was a true Renaissance man, bridging the gap between science and art.
And he didn't stop there.
Oh, no.
You said he was also interested in geology.
Oh, yeah. Fascinated by fossils and the whole idea of a changing Earth,
Fossils. Wow. This guy never ceases to amaze me. So what were his thoughts on fossils? I mean, they didn't exactly have paleontology back then.
No, they didn't.
Right.
Back then, most people just thought fossils were just, oddly shaped rocks.
Yeah.
But Hooke, he had a hunch that they were actually the remains of ancient creatures.
Whoa. So he was already hinting at the idea of, like, a deep history of life on Earth.
Yeah, he was way ahead of his time. It's incredible how he was connecting all these different fields, from the microscopic to the cosmic, from physics to architecture.
It's like he saw the interconnectedness of everything, the big picture.
That's what makes him so fascinating. He
Right.
wasn't just brilliant, he was a visionary, a polymath who really pushed the boundaries of knowledge in so many directions.
Yeah.
It's just a shame that his work was often overlooked.
Yeah, his name kind of faded into obscurity, but it seems like in recent years there's been a renewed interest in Hooke.
Definitely. There's this movement to reclaim his place in history.
Good. It's about time, right?
It is. I mean, his story is a reminder that scientific progress, it's rarely a solo act. It's
Yeah.
built on the contributions of so many people, not just the big names.
And sometimes it takes a deep dive like we're doing now
Yeah,
to really uncover those hidden figures and appreciate their impact.
absolutely.
It's inspiring, really.
It
It
is.
reminds us that spirit of curiosity, that drive to understand how things work,
Yeah,
that's something that's in all of us.
it is.
And Hooke's story just encourages us to, keep asking questions, keep exploring, keep pushing the boundaries of what we know.
Keep that curiosity alive.
Yeah.
It's like opening a treasure chest of scientific drama.
All right, so we've got Hooke and Newton, these two scientific titans, about to go head to head. What was the first point of contention?
Well, their biggest disagreements were all about light and gravity, the fundamental forces of the universe.
Right, heavy stuff. So first, let's tackle light,
Okay, so Newton, he was a big believer in the corpuscular theory of light.
which basically means what? Light is made up of tiny particles.
Exactly. Like, imagine little bullets zipping through space.
Okay, so Newton saw light as a stream of particles. Makes sense, given his work on motion and forces. But what about Hooke? What was his take?
Well, Hooke, always ready to challenge the status quo, he preferred the wave theory of light.
So he thought light was more like ripples on a pond.
Exactly. Vibrations traveling through some kind of medium.
Huh. It's fascinating how their contrasting personalities seem to mirror their scientific views. Newton, the meticulous mathematician, focused on those individual particles.
Yeah.
And Hooke, the inventive observer, saw the interconnectedness of waves.
It's like their approaches to science were baked into their DNA. And you know what's even crazier?
What?
Modern physics tells us that light actually acts like both.
Whoa, hold on. So they were both right.
Yeah. Isn't that mind-blowing? It's this wild concept called wave-particle duality.
Wave-particle duality. Okay, that just broke my brain a little bit.
It's one of those things that makes you realize just how much we still don't know about the universe.
Makes you wonder what they could have accomplished if they had, put aside their rivalry and actually collaborated.
Imagine the possibilities, the discoveries they could have made together.
Yeah, but their egos and personalities just clash too much for a true partnership, right?
Unfortunately, yeah. I mean, their disagreement over light was fierce, but the dispute over gravity was even more intense. Hooke felt that Newton basically stole his ideas and never gave him credit.
Okay, so let's dig into that gravity debate. What exactly was Hooke claiming?
All right, so picture this. Hooke's in his lab, messing around with conical pendulums. You know, those weights on strings that swing in circles?
Yeah, I vaguely remember those from physics class. Not exactly the most exciting thing, but hey, I guess you never know where inspiration will strike.
Well, for Hooke, watching these pendulums was a eureka moment. He realized that their motion was kind of like how he envisioned planets orbiting the sun.
Interesting. So he's making this connection between a simple pendulum in his lab and the grand movements of celestial bodies.
Exactly. So he writes to Newton, throwing out this idea that maybe, just maybe, there's an attractive force between objects. And get this, he even suggests that this force might be inversely proportional to the square of the distance between them.
Hold on, isn't that like the fundamental principle of Newton's law of universal gravitation? The idea that every object in the universe attracts every other object.
Bingo, you got it. Hooke essentially laid the groundwork, but he didn't have the mathematical tools to develop it fully.
So Hooke provided the conceptual spark, the big picture view, and Newton, with his mathematical brilliance, was able to translate that into a precise equation.
Exactly. A classic case of great minds think alike, but only one gets the equation named after them.
Right. And to make matters worse, when Newton published his masterpiece, Principia, which lays out his law of universal gravitation, He barely acknowledges Hooke.
Yeah, Newton really downplayed Hooke's contribution, which understandably upset him.
Ouch, that's gotta sting. To see someone else basically run with your ideas and take all the credit.
Yeah, it definitely left a sour taste in Hooke's mouth.
It reminds us that even in the world of science, where we strive for objectivity, human emotions like jealousy and ambition can still get in the way.
Absolutely. Science is a human endeavor, with all its complexities and flaws.
It makes you appreciate the human side of these scientific giants. They weren't just cold, calculating machines. They were passionate, driven individuals who sometimes let their egos get the better of them.
Totally. It makes their stories so much more relatable. They're brilliant, but they were also human.
Speaking of human, we haven't even touched on Hooke's work as an architect.
Uh-huh.
Didn't he play a role in rebuilding London after the Great Fire?
Oh, yes. The Great Fire of 1666 was a devastating event, a turning point in London's history.
Just trying to imagine London in ruins, buildings reduced to ash, thousands homeless. It must have been chaotic and traumatic.
It was a defining moment for the city. And amidst all that chaos, Hooke saw an opportunity to reshape London. He teamed up with Christopher Wren, the architect behind St. Paul's Cathedral.
Wait, so Hooke was working side by side with Wren. That's a power couple of design and innovation. What did they come up with?
They envisioned a new London with wider streets, more open spaces, and fire-resistant buildings. They were thinking big, trying to create a city that was both beautiful and resilient.
That's amazing. So what happened to their plan? Did they get to rebuild London according to their vision?
Well, that's the frustrating part. Hooke's detailed plan for the city, it's gone, vanished, lost to history.
No way. A lost plan. Now that's a mystery for the ages. I'd love to know what he imagined, how his scientific mind might have shaped his architectural vision.
It's a question that continues to intrigue historians and architects. We can only speculate about what could have been.
What a shame. But even though that grand plan is lost, you mentioned we can still see glimpses of his scientific thinking in some of the structures that were actually built.
Absolutely. For example, he had a deep understanding of the catenary curve.
The catenary curve, that's the shape a hanging chain makes, right? What does that have to do with buildings?
Well, it turns out that a catenary arch is incredibly strong and stable, perfect for supporting weight.
Ah, dude.
And Hooke, being the brilliant mind that he was, recognized this and incorporated catenary arches into his designs for churches and other buildings.
So he was using his knowledge of physics, his understanding of forces and shapes, to make buildings that weren't just aesthetically pleasing, but also structurally sound.
Exactly. He was like a 17th century engineer, blending artistry and scientific principles.
It's incredible how his interests spanned so many different fields. From the microscopic world to the vastness of space, from physics to architecture, he seemed to see the interconnectedness of everything. And he didn't stop there, right? You mentioned he was also fascinated by geology.
Oh, yeah. Fossils, the changing earth, the vastness of geological time, all that fascinated him.
Wow, this guy really was centuries ahead of his time in so many ways. So, what were his thoughts on fossils? I mean, they didn't exactly have paleontology back then, did they?
No, not in the way we understand it today. Back then, most people thought fossils were just oddly shaped rocks.
Right, right.
But Hooke, he suspected that they were actually the remains of ancient organisms. He was already hinting at this deep history of life on Earth, this vast timescale that stretched back millions of years.
It's amazing how he was piecing together these seemingly disparate fields. Microscopy, astronomy, physics, architecture, geology. It's like he had this intuitive grasp of the interconnectedness of everything, this big picture view of how the universe works.
That's what makes Robert Hooke such a compelling figure. He wasn't just a brilliant scientist. He was a visionary, a polymath who pushed the boundaries of knowledge in so many different directions. It's just a shame that his contributions were often overlooked, his name almost forgotten.
It's a reminder that scientific progress is rarely a solo effort. It's built on the contributions of many, not just the big names we remember. And sometimes it takes a deep dive like we've done today to uncover those hidden figures and appreciate the true scope of their impact.
It's also a reminder that the spirit of curiosity, that drive to understand how things work, that's something that resides in all of us. Hooke's story inspires us to keep asking questions, keep exploring, keep pushing the boundaries of what we know and what we think is possible.
So, next time you see a spring, or look through a microscope, or gaze up at the stars, take a moment to remember Robert Hooke, the often overlooked genius who helped us see the world in new and extraordinary ways. He reminds us that there's always more to discover, hidden wonders waiting to be unveiled, if only we dare to look closer.